And I think it was the same case after 1997. Yes, I acknowledge one country, two systems, but I continue to serve the chief executive, who's locally elected and who is the chief executive of the people of Hong Kong. I'm not there to serve the central government. I'm here to serve the people of Hong Kong and to be loyal to the government of the day. But being loyal to the government of the day does not mean that you keep quiet when you see things going wrong. In fact, any civil servant, and I suggest to you, any journalist worth your salt, you should be prepared to speak your mind. What is sometimes defined by people as speaking truth unto power. And that is that you have the courage to speak out when things are going wrong or when you feel a particular policy is not the right policy for the people of Hong Kong. Because if you keep quiet and the government goes in for a policy that doesn't exactly meet the people of Hong Kong's expectations, then what does that serve? So every one of us has a duty to speak our mind and to give our honest advice. We're not there just to echo somebody else's views. And the more senior you become, the more you should be aware of the fact you are there to give your honest advice about the efficacy of particular programs or the efficacy of particular plans that are supposed to be serving the people of Hong Kong. What I do find there is a fundamental difference is that the British government, I think, by and large, has a good civil service system. It's a system that is based on meritocracy, meaning that the appointment and the promotion of civil servants are based on merit and nothing else. It is not based on political patronage. It is not based on whether somebody on top happens to like you or you happen to agree with their view. And the meritocratic nature of the civil service actually is the best means of encouraging good, honest people who want to serve the people of Hong Kong to join the civil service. And also in those days, I think what engendered loyalty and what kept up morale was to a large extent the fact that it was a permanent civil service. Some people describe it as the iron rice bowl of the civil servants, but there was a reason as to why people were recruited on a permanent basis, because it gave to civil servants a more or less permanent career, so long as you do your job well, which means that civil servants did not have to worry about losing their job simply because they happened to disagree with their boss. There was a set system of discipline of civil servants. Civil servants were just as accountable as political appointees, except that there was a set of regulations that governed their behavior and governed the taking of disciplinary action. Now, what I think has gone wrong with governance in recent years, particularly after the introduction of the political appointment system, is that you no longer have everybody working for a same objective. I think that there is a lack of trust and cooperation between political appointees and the civil servants, and without trust, there can be no cooperation. A government can only operate well when there is a strong esprit de corps, when everybody feels they are part of the team. Young people look to their elders as role models, and people on top have to lead by example. There has to be a set of core values that unites everybody in the civil service, and these core values are honesty, integrity, openness, transparency, accountability. Okay? But you have to lead by example. There's nothing worse than for somebody at the very top to say to his minions down below, don't do things this way, and then he does exactly that thing. You totally confuse your subordinates. So core values are important. There's also a due process for doing things. In the old days, there was a process whereby you encouraged junior officers to submit their views. And sometimes listening to junior officers is an important part of formulating public policy. Why? Because junior officers, particularly those at the grassroots level, let's say you are a district officer, You are most in touch with what people in your district feels they need, whether it is more swimming pools, more this, more that. And the ability of the junior officer to be able to reflect these views to the senior officers mean that when policies are being formulated, you can take account of community views. But I'm afraid today there seems to be less and less evidence of an adherence to this due process. Everything seems to be top-down, and senior officers don't seem to be particularly interested in listening to what their junior officers have to say. And that is why I think you have seen this series of missteps. The fact that in the morning the government pushes out a particular policy, and when there is a hoo-ha from the press or there's a hoo-ha from the legislature, they immediately take back the policy and do a complete U-turn. Well, this sort of U-turns does the government's credibility no good. It simply just suggests to the community that the government hasn't thought through its policies, isn't in tune with the pulse of the community, and therefore is less and less open and transparent and less and less accountable for its actions to the people of Hong Kong. I think this is the current unhappiness with the state of governance in Hong Kong.
Hello, Mrs. Chan. I'm Jocelyn Yu from Year 2. I have 3 questions. The first one is, Mr. Zhang Youxing said the field was about the election of chief executive at the time of 2017. So how did you see his speech, and any comment about his speech? And the second question,
which speech are you referring to?
Mr. Zhang Youxing, his work.
Oh, Mr. Zhang Youxing.
Yes.
I actually agree with the recent comments that Mr. Zhang has made. For example, I agree entirely with him that central government leaders, I think, at least some of them, are much more open and have a greater toleration for different points of view than a lot of people in Hong Kong give them credit for. And because of this, I can't imagine that central government would wish to impose upon Hong Kong a chief executive whom the community as a whole cannot support. Because when you do not have the support of the community, the chief executive's work is difficult enough even with support. But when there is no support, when there is apprehension about the ability of that chief executive to serve the interests of Hong Kong, then it makes the job of the chief executive almost impossible. So I believe that if there is a strong opinion, and there is, I think, within the community, that we want to have a genuinely free election, bearing in mind the definition that I just set out for you, that is, everybody, every qualified person has the right not only to stand for election, but to be elected. We don't want to fetch up with a system in 2017 where the candidates standing for election are already screened and sanctioned by central government. Because these are then not Hong Kong's choices. I haven't had the right to elect. I may like to elect somebody, or at least to allow somebody to stand for election who may not agree with government on all things. I may feel that he is a perfectly good candidate for chief executive. Also, I think there is no need to fear that by giving the vote to Hong Kong people, we will somehow elect somebody who cannot work with Hong Kong, with the central government. I think Hong Kong people have demonstrated time and again their pragmatism, their realization that today, as part of China, there is closer and closer economic integration, and there are closer and closer relationships on many, many fronts. Under the Constitution, there are certain things where the power to decide finally is reserved to the central government. So I don't think Hong Kong people would deliberately elect somebody who cannot work with central government. I don't think there's any fear of that.